Gusto nyo ba manalo sila? Receive lang sila ng salary, walang trabaho? Okay. So, yan. Pag-isipan nyo yan. Kasi, kailangan you have invested in them, therefore, get your ROI. So, we will be assisted with that, no? Through our topic this afternoon. So, without much ado, I'm going to give you now Sir Ray.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me here in Mexico. So the BEST stands for Basic Education Sector Transformation. The TA stands for the Technical Assistance. I am the lead M&A specialist for BEST. We have, in each region, we have a M&A field specialist. Among the components in BEST, it is only M&A that has a presence at the regional level. Our main task is actually to build capabilities or the competencies of the regional and division on monitoring and evaluation. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about this afternoon is actually the technical assistance that we will be providing you on monitoring and evaluation. This is not an orientation in terms of what monitoring and evaluation is all about, but in the process, I may be providing some orientation in terms of monitoring and evaluation. This is just to ensure that we are of the same level, of the same perspective as regards M&E, right? Now, I've been doing monitoring and evaluation work for the last 25 years. And so far, when I go around in DepEd, I have been in DepEd for I think 10 years, doing consulting work in DepEd for 10 years, but in other agencies, so for the last 25 years. This is one of the things that palagi ko nakikita o sinasabi. I think you will agree with this one. M&E system is actually one of the most important functions in an organization, whether it is actually private or the public sector. In the private sector, they don't really call it M&E, they call it control. Okay, implementation and control. Kaya, meron silang tinatawag ng control yan. In the public sector, they call it monitoring and evaluation. Okay? In the private sector, some would also call it operations management. Right? So it's very important. I think you will also agree with me that it is very important. But ironically, this is also one of the things that I observed. Okay? The M&A function is actually one of the most neglected functions also. Okay? You go in different organizations, they will tell you it's very important. Okay? But it's really a big issue when it comes now to an organization. Now, be it public or private sector. Okay? Since we are in the public sector, I have much more experience in the public sector. This is actually one of the most neglected functions in the public sector. Okay? Let's see, let's take a look in terms of how it is manifested, the neglect of the M&E function. Okay? Normally, when we hear monitoring and evaluation, the first thing that will come into our mind is that M&E is about reports. Right? That's the first thing that will come into our mind. Okay? It is about reports, it is about forms, it is about instruments. That's the first thing that will come into our mind. I remember around 10 years ago when I was involved in Cebu, in Secondary Education Development Improvement Project, and that was the first time I came into DepEd. I was asked to lecture on monitoring and evaluation. The issue at that time was, CDIP it was a 6-year project. On its 3rd year, it was only able to accomplish 9% of the outputs that it should be delivering. So there was an issue in terms of why the very delay as far as implementation is concerned. Now, one of the things that surfaced actually sabi nila in reports. Okay. So when I stood up in front with the M&E coordinators, the first thing that they asked from me was, "Sir, give us the report format." Okay. We will submit the report to you. Okay. Give us the form. Give us the instrument okay, the typical response when it comes to monitoring and evaluation. I told them, hold on to your horses. We are not going to do that. Okay? If I will be your consultant on M&E, reports, forms, and instruments, they are actually at the bottom of my list when it comes to setting up a monitoring and evaluation system. The first thing, okay, that we should be talking about M&E is actually we need to ensure what is the scope of the monitoring and evaluation. Mark was talking about the framework. That's the first thing that should come into our mind. The framework, the M&E framework. What's the scope of our monitoring and evaluation? When we talk about scope of monitoring and evaluation, we are essentially talking about objectives. Okay? We're talking about the indicators. We're talking about targets. Okay? If the objectives are not clear, if the indicators are not clear, if the targets are not clear, then what are we going to monitor? There's nothing to monitor, ladies and gentlemen, if the objectives are not clear. Now, I would like to challenge you, probably majority in your schools, okay, probably some of the divisions here, not all, some or majority, that when you wrote the SIPs or when you wrote the ETPs, even the targets are not very clear. Okay? The targets are not very clear. In fact, there was one DEDP that I had seen, not in Region 7, okay? Not in Region 7. One DEDP that I had seen that says, at the end of 6 years, okay, my participation rate is 90%. At the end of 6 years. And yet, when I look at the baseline here, the year 0, the participation rate was 96%. So notice that. So we tend to take for granted objectives formulation. We take for granted target setting. Okay. In fact, we mistaken target setting with forecasting. Those two are different things. Okay. Forecasting and targeting are different. Yet most of your school heads are actually doing forecasting. Okay, let me explain. Okay, the things that they are putting in their SIPs are actually forecasts, not targets. Let me explain. Okay, if your historical data is 5, 10, 15 in the last 3 years, okay, last 3 years, your historical data is 5, 10, 15. Then what is your next 3 years forecast? Okay, 20, 25, 30. Okay, the forecast is a function of the historical data. What if your historical data is 1, 2, 3? What is your forecast in the next 3 years? 4, 5, 6. What if it is 1, 1, 1?
2, 2, 2.
1, 1, 1. Okay, 2, 2, 2 mali. 1, 1, 1. Okay? That's what your school heads are doing. Sasabihin nila, sir, ang target ko next year for my math is actually just an increase in 2%. Why? Bakit ano? Sir, kasi the last 2 years, 2%, 2%, 2% man ang increase ko. So therefore, my next year target is actually 2%. That is not target. That is a forecast. Now, forecast, okay, meaning you are not introducing anything new. Okay, the reason you are planning is that you are strategizing. You are introducing something new. When you introduce something new, you should be targeting higher than the forecast. Okay? You should be targeting higher than the forecast. So right from the very start, if in the planning context, if in the planning case, we are actually mistaken when it comes to targeting, then when we do the monitoring and evaluation, what do you expect? Okay? In terms of indicators, they're also known in some documents as measures or metrics. Now be careful with the metrics, be careful with the measures. Okay? Be careful with that. I'll be talking about it later. So, let me repeat it. I'm not saying that you don't submit the reports. Okay? Pag hindi lang sa na report, magsasubmit kayo. I'm not saying that. But what I'm simply saying is that there should be a context of the report. Okay? The context is the scope, the context is the framework. Otherwise, when you just prepare and prepare and prepare reports, what will happen to you is, in caricature kanina, you will have